If you don't believe in ghosts, now's a pretty good time to start. Mercurial the Spectre is Dota's spooky nuisance, able to take a beating, throw it down, flip it, and reverse it right back to you. Just when you think initiating a teamfight might be the right idea, Spectre can haunt you in the game and likely haunt you in your dreams after the fact. Don't wander off alone, it's the history of Spectre. Spectre is an incredibly hard carry who is equal parts tank and ass beater, provided that she can get to the late game of course. Spectral Dagger sends a small projectile in a straight line or to a targeted unit, and deals a small amount of damage to all enemy units caught by the spell. The dagger will leave behind a shadow path on the way to the target and all enemies hit. Enemies walking on the shadow path will be slowed, and Spectre gains move speed as well as unobstructed movement while on it. Desolate is a passive ability that makes your auto attack deal bonus pure damage to enemies who are alone. As of 7.07, this also reduces enemies' vision when they have Desolate applied to them. Dispersion is another passive ability that reduces damage that Spectre takes and reflects it back to all enemies in an AoE. The reflected damage becomes lower the further the target is away from Spectre. The ability is pretty much a game of stop hitting yourself as you take the damage right back for trying to attack her. I'll let you choose the reference for this one. Spectre's ultimate is Haunt, spawning an uncontrollable illusion for all active enemy heroes in the game. Although they aren't as strong or durable as Spectre herself, she can use the sub-ability created by the spell, Reality, to change places with any illusion to take the enemy straight to Pound Town. Mercurial phased into reality on February 24th, 2006 on patch 6.28 with the title of Avatar of Vengeance named after the Warcraft 3 unit. The hero was most likely named after Mercurial Zen, the artist who drew the loading screen for this version of the game. Here, Mercurial's original skills are reminiscent of what we have now, but with an emphasis of dishing out revenge to her enemies. With Phase, she gained movement speed and unobstructed movement for a moderate amount of time, kind of like having a built-in pair of Phase boots before they even existed. Haunt was a basic skill and would target an enemy hero in order to create illusions to beat them up. And since the versions I played for capturing footage didn't have AI opponents, you'll just have to use your imagination here. Wow, absolutely breathtaking. Dispersion also worked differently, having a percentage chance to avoid damage and distribute it in an area around her. This also comes with a mini stun effect, making it feel like you have the hiccups in a boxing match. Her old ultimate was Vengeance, a passive aura ability that causes allied units to deal damage and mini-stun to a random enemy whenever they die. Instead of being an unkillable force of nature that most of us would know her as today, Mercurial's first skill set more so revolved around punishing enemies for succeeding. This feels like a case of top-down design where Ice Frog wanted to create a hero that embodied the Avatar of Vengeance theme, and I dare say, he did a good job at it. In 6.33, Mercurial had a rework and had her title renamed to Spectre as a result. Basic stat numbers were changed around with her base attack damage having a huge increase. Phase was reworked into Spectral Dagger. In terms of functionality, this gave Spectre a small nuke and slow at the cost of limiting her movement buff to the Shadow Trail. Haunt became her new ultimate, but you already knew about that. Vengeance was demoted as a basic skill, and it debuffs enemies in an AoE, dealing damage to them based on whether they kill a creep or allied hero. Don't get too attached to it though, because in 6.34, Vengeance was replaced by Desolate, and from here on out, Spectre would hold on to these 4 skills. There was also a small change in her lore due to the title change. As the Avatar of Vengeance, it states that she had shared many similarities with ghasts and evil spirits. Nope, didn't mispronounce that, it was directly in the game. Can't wait to get a paycheck for pointing that one out. Her allegiance was also devoted to the Frozen Throne, while in her updated lore, she simply enjoys destruction, and the fight for the Ancients is the chaotic outlet she was looking for. In 6.50, Dispersion received a rework, reducing any damage Spectre takes, and reflects it onto all enemy units within a moderate radius. Damage in this way isn't split, so all units will receive the same amount of damage. Overall, this prevented more damage than the proc chance she had previously, giving her much more consistency throughout the course of the game. This skill also received a buff in 6.53, increasing the radius from 600 to 1000. 6.65 made Dispersion's reflect damage spread evenly throughout all units affected, making it the communism of passive effects. This means that while fighting large groups, this would deal significantly less damage, which is probably for the best as it just offered way too much utility otherwise. The last major change for Spectre's Dota 1 run happened in 6.70, where Dispersion once again had a retooling. Instead of dealing damage evenly, it started dealing the same damage to all enemies again, although the damage is based on distance, which is what we have today. Heroes of Newerth blessed the world by giving us Sandwraith in October of 2009, which is befitting for the scariest month. Although a bit of fair warning, this is not a dragon, doppelganger, or the worst support in history. Sandwraith was originally a direct port of Spectre with a Desert Flare. His skills here are named Desert's Curse, Deserted, Dissipate, and Mirage. Combined with his model, which is essentially a sandy skeleton, I'd give Newerth an A+ for their interpretation. Sandwraith's voice lines are pretty fun too. I mean, there isn't much you can do for what is essentially a dry ghost, so he has a pretty generic voice.
Time is ticking. Prepare to die. The sand will clean your bones.
What's worth noting is upon casting Desert's Curse, he yells out a pretty iconic line.
The desert's power.
And apparently he has the side job of doing open mic comedy.
What do you have when a lawyer is buried up to his neck in sand? Not enough sand.
Sandwraith had a significant overhaul in patch 4.20, differentiating him from Spectre by a wide margin. He gained a new icon and model, taking notes from Reaper's wardrobe it looks like. His two passives were replaced. There's Sandstalkers, an active skill creating 2 illusions to spook his foes, and Enkindle, which offers Sandwraith and all of his illusions passive attack speed. This made Sandwraith more offense focused, and adhered to the desert theme a lot more with the use of his mirages. The Newerth team explained the reasoning for changing Sandwraith with Dissipate having very little counterplay as one of the major reasons. There's a whole lot of insight provided by the team for this development, and Spectre may benefit from a few of these changes. Now, League of Legends also has what I consider a semi-port of Spectre in the form of Nocturne. And if you think that's a stretch, let's start with the surface level observations. Nocturne has a lot of ghost-like features and looks a lot like a shadow. His title is the Eternal Nightmare, and as you know, playing against the Fed Spectre is the greatest terror of them all. His Q, Duskbringer, is the most obvious parallel to Spectre, as it shoots out a projectile and leaves a dusk trail that grants Nocturne attack damage, move speed, and he ignores unit collision. He has a defensive option in Shroud of Darkness, though this is done to negate spells coming his way, rather than reducing and deflecting damage. His third skill is Unspeakable Horror, which tethers to a target to deal magic damage and inflicts fear on them after 2 seconds. It isn't too similar to Desolate in terms of the overall effect, but it is a good way to pick off a single target. His ultimate, Paranoia, reduces the sight of all enemy champions, and activating it again allows him to dash at a long distance toward an enemy, acting like a much creepier version of Haunt. I remember playing Nocturne when he came out, and he felt like a more active mobile version of Spectre. But take a look at this. Haunting Nocturne? What kind of ghost would wear a bedsheet? I'll tell you. A nerd ghost. I'd give him a good old-fashioned swirly for wearing something like that.
Darkness.
Wait, what's going on? Oh god! Spectre was brought into Dota 2 in August 2011 during TI1. A few design notes to bring up. Spectre's model has a ghostly appearance with a primarily purple shade, almost acting like a silhouette, much like the Avatar of Vengeance model. Spectre also started out with a big hula hoop weapon, bearing more resemblance to her Warcraft form. Her voice lines also have a unique effect where 2 tracks would play at the same time, a normal one playing regularly, and another that has the same voice line reversed. This is somewhat a reference to the Avatar of Vengeance, whose voice lines are a reverse of Maeve Shadowsong's responses, although Spectre sounds more like a sad girl than an obsessive warden. Spectre's lore is also pretty basic as far as stories go. Spectre is a being of intense and violent energies that is attracted to battles happening in the physical world. Being some kind of otherworldly effigy, Spectre's item descriptions build upon that idea, and they usually mention that the way she perceives senses are very different from what humans can even comprehend. On February 12, 2015, during the New Bloom update, the Mercurial's Call item was released as part of one of the stretch goals for the TI4 prize pool. Once it hit $7.2 million, players were able to vote on an alternative voice for any hero in the game, and Spectre had the honor of winning the vote. The item itself can be equipped to give Spectre a new set of voice lines, sounding more like a ghost than whatever kind of space demon Spectre actually is. For the most part, her personality is much more aggressive, having bad intentions towards the enemy heroes.
We perish. This
Moving on to the changes, 6.73 made it so Dispersion no longer disables blinks or consumables, which I fully support because the least we could do to fight a rampaging Spectre is having the option to run away. On a patch released on December 13, 2012, Spectre had a model update, changing from the big pink hula hoop to something resembling the alligator from Jackals. It's a really good manga, look it up. Even though the reaction to the new weapon wasn't the best because change is bad and change is scary, it did come with a funny bug. On occasion, if you activated Haunt, the illusions would carry both weapons at the same time, granting you the best of both worlds. On January 17, 2013, Spectre's icons were updated too. I'm not sure which one of these I like more than the other, but I can say that without a doubt, neither of these look as good as the old beta icons. In 6.79, Reality's cooldown was reduced from 8 seconds to 0, and its cast point was also reduced to 0. This means that you can bounce from hero to hero instead of choosing a singular target to receive the ghost hands. In 6.84, Dispersion's damage no longer ignored Ancient Creeps, Roshan, or Creep heroes, which made the spell have much more utility in the late game, especially if Warlock's golems keep trying to take your lunch money from you. Reality also started swapping with the illusions you target through Haunt rather than destroying them. With this, you could juke your enemies a lot more and really confuse them with your position on the map. In 6.85, Desolate could work against non-heroes, and with this, you may as well take that range creep and paint a big fat target over its head because Spectre is coming for that ass. 7.00 introduced Spectre's talents, and these might be by far the most boring set of talents I have ever seen. They don't really affect how you play Spectre all too much, though one side emphasizes damage while the other one narrows down on the tankiness. 7.07 made her talents a little more fun because they at least include her abilities. That said, they're all pretty bland otherwise. Luckily here, Desolate gained another passive component that reduced the target's vision by a certain amount for 5 seconds when applied. I love any and all abilities that impose panic onto an enemy player, and this is no exception. This also fits in well with the ghost motif, so I'm endorsing the hell out of this change. To wrap things up, 7.07c made it so that Desolate pure spell immunity, at the cost of reducing its overall damage. This is a case of sacrificing early game potency for late game consistency, and with Spectre being such an item dependent late game hero, I'll gladly take it. Spectre, you and I may have our differences, and you're a loose cannon, but damn it, you get results. Even though Mercurial starts the game off as frail and unthreatening like Casper the Friendly Ghost, with enough support and love, she can become unstoppable, like Amidamaru, or Ken Kaneki, or Casper the Friendly Ghost, with a gun. I'm Dennis the Tall, and that was the history of Spectre. Before I go, please follow my Twitter if you haven't already. It's a lot easier to keep in touch with me there, and I occasionally post previews of future Dotaology episodes there. I also want to thank Rebecca Crossing for drawing the cute specters from the title card. You can follow her Instagram for honestly astounding art. Finally, just wanted to acknowledge Meager for his nice comment on the History of Ricky episode. I know a lot of my subscribers come from the Philippines and the Southeast Asia region, so I just wanted to say thank you. Knowing that people from across the world are watching this series is just really surreal, but I appreciate your viewership a whole lot.